seen is that COVID-19 has galvanized many of us into action, and literally everyone, to a man on this call, has talked around collaboration. So my question, and it really was the question that we've got as on the poll during this session, is that though the response has been amazing, it maybe has been a little bit fractured. So is a pivotal moment, and to use Todd's expression around making open banking to be defined right now, what can we do to collaborate and come together to sort of join the dots a little more? Simon, please, help me out here. What do you think we should do to join these dots?
So I think from a cross-industry perspective, I think the panel on here, there's a number of exceptional people and exceptional companies represented. I would like to see us come together and sort of drive almost like a working group type approach for the UK and potentially beyond, set the example for the globe, but come together in some kind of sort of working group fashion to continue to push the agenda. I've talked about the need for there to be a unified voice rather than that fragmented approach, and that's absolutely critical. We're very, very committed to this, and I think this is a unique, once-in-a-generation opportunity for the government, predominantly, and other industry bodies to really push the agenda for open banking, and I think that will set the stage for the UK to be very much leading in that capacity.
And as they said in the liftoff report, we are creating the blueprint for open banking. So that is just aligned with what you've said. David, I would like to ask you a question, as you very generously have been my co-host during this session. What do you think we should do as an industry to join the dots, please?
I think, if I'm honest with you, I think it's continually doing things like we're doing now. I mean, how can we keep shining a light on areas where people are doing amazing things? I mean, open banking for me gives you the Lego blocks, but doesn't necessarily tell you what to build with them. So being in a situation where we're really surfacing major consumer or business problems, and then being in a situation where we can help people shine a light on the solutions that they're creating, that's what good community is for me.
Thank you, and I would agree. Francesco, in our briefing call, we talked around a working group, which is Simon has touched on now, and you had some amazing ideas. I would just like to shine a light on, to use that expression again, around governance and what that could look like. Would you like to share them, please?
Sure. I think one of the greatest things that happened in FinTech here in the UK is actually that we as an industry often organize ourselves around working groups, and we put in place governance. I have to say that, for instance, in Europe, we are in quite deep in a number of other working groups and organization all over Europe, and they are far behind the level of organization that we actually have here in the UK. OBE is actually a good example of that, with all the critics, all the limits, but it's still quite ahead of the game compared to other countries. So I think that should be probably the spirit of trying to create a little bit of governance around what sort of technologies, what sorts of initiatives can move the needle. May not be solely open banking. It can be a number of other things built together, merged together, that can deliver this source of help in a time where it's very needed. And I think right now, if you compare this crisis versus 2008, I think FinTech at that point in time was a very small part. It was effectively the response that spun up out of that crisis. Here, FinTech is not anymore a small bubble, but it's actually a quite large force, and we have quite some power of reaching out business and consumers. Therefore, we have to be sensible. We need to put in place structured governance organization that can help, can coordinate larger efforts. And then I'm very practical. I think that from an open banking perspective, we need to double down. Like we can't just say, okay, it's done. We have all the capabilities that we need, and the story is over. I think we all know that we can further help consumers when we progress with an open finance kind of agenda. And so let's push on that. Let's make sure that the banks are not stonewalling this kind of conversation now because there is COVID as an excuse. Actually, on the contrary, I think like we should double down. We should have the industry bodies helping us and forcing the banks into the right direction. Same thing on payments. We all know that VRP, variable recurring payment, is maybe the holy grail of open banking, something that can help save businesses an obscene amount of money. And this is the best time to roll out something like this. So I think we have the ideas, we have even the industry bodies already in place. So it's just like about doing things, really.
Good point, well made. And let's see if we can get some of that doing into a working group, as Simon suggested. Todd, I'd like you to sort of wrap up this bit and close in terms of what we can do collectively as a community, and that's where the power and the strength is to make this a defining moment.
Well, I think what's been described here, partner up to bring solutions, take action to solve these real problems, realize that we're probably solving a real problem for the world, but we're also advancing our industry. And I do like the suggestions here about not letting this end at the end of this crisis. How do we take this forward in an ongoing working group structure?